Okay, we might start. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Julie Penny. I work with Seafood Industry Australia as the Projects and Policy General Manager.
Firstly, I would like to do a quick welcome to country. So would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and our oceans and waterways, past and present. We've got a really close connection with Indigenous users in the fisheries and aquaculture sector, going back thousands of years. So really pleased to be able to bring you all along on this journey.
I'm losing my voice at the moment, so I was meant to facilitate today, but Tom Constantino, who's helping us manage this project, has very kindly offered to help run the webinar, given I'm going to sound more and more no, I shouldn't say that, but more and more grisly as the day goes on. So I might throw across to Tom if that's all right. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us.
Thanks, JP. And as always, such a battler turning up and introducing anyway the webinar. But it's always good to see a really good crowd on these webinars. It's our second one we've done in this sort of series, which is the Aquaculture Decarb webinar series. It's basically a way that we can almost provide in real time progress updates from the FRDC-funded and SIA and Blue Economy project concerning all of the different decarb opportunities in the aquaculture sector. Now, if you're wondering how it fits in and why we've got some other experts from the Project AquaGrid team on the line, the projects are quite similar in that they're both looking at different opportunities for, I suppose, like real and wholesale decarbonisation opportunities in the aquaculture sector. Me as the project manager for our project has been watching along the AquaGrid team and their progress for some time, really looking for opportunities in the policy space, which is how I met Stephanie, and we've had a couple of conversations around that. There's plenty of other webinars to come in this series, and if you keep an eye on your inbox, you'll see more invitations as they roll through. They're all about different sort of elements of the wider picture, the decarbonisation picture. And so today is about the AquaGrid team sharing a little bit about their project, and in particular the policy implications, or I always refer to it as sort of a shopping list of the sort of things that you'd need to help activate initiatives like the AquaGrid. So, Steph, if it's okay to hand over to you, Steph Thornton is the cluster manager for the Australian Ocean Energy Group. She has an enormous amount of experience working in this space in lots of different countries, and I'll let her just give you a little brief introduction to the operation down there on the Great Ocean Road, and her team and her project. So thanks, Steph.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Julie. My name, as I've already been introduced, I'm Stephanie Thornton. I'm the former general manager of the Australian Ocean Energy Group. But before I begin, I want to extend a sincere thank you to Seafood Industry Australia for supporting our project, and certainly for providing this opportunity to share the positive results of Project AquaGrid. Project AquaGrid is the project name of an Australian initiative whose aim was to explore and design a scalable, renewable ocean energy solution to help decarbonize the aquaculture industry in Australia. It was designed and implemented by Australian Ocean Energy Group, but we were very grateful for funding from the Fisheries Research and Development Corporation, FRDC, to support our project, which was aimed at enhancing the resilience of the aquaculture operations and helping to be responsive to climate change and support the sector's decarbonization efforts, as Tom has already mentioned. I'm going to introduce the team in just a moment, but a little bit more about the background, to explain a little bit more about why we undertook this project. In short, our objective was to establish the value proposition for ocean energy. Being an Australian Ocean Energy Group initiative, of course, that was important to us, but along with the value proposition for an end user, which is the aquaculture industry or end users. The thing that drove us that was interesting was that while land-based microgrids are well established, they're proven, they're credible energy systems, and people understand what they are, and they're in play and very much used today, very little is actually understood about ocean energy. So that was kind of the driving basis for us to initiate this project and to answer the questions, or I should say, the questions that formed the basis for our project included such as how will wave energy generation integrate with solar power and battery storage and contribute to overall energy production? And would it meet the energy needs of an overall would it meet the needs of an aquaculture operator? And trying to understand all their operating requirements and to see if the integrated system would address those issues. And then third was what would be the cumulative effects of adding ocean energy generation to a land-based microgrid system, meaning that what happens when we add this new generation source to something that we already know, which is solar and wind and battery storage and so forth. So by focusing on Southern Ocean Mariculture, who's an abalone producer in Victoria, and we have Hamish here as the general manager. They provided a real life case study for us and the basis for us to do our project. And so the project was successfully modeled on a system our project successfully modeled a system that whose objectives were to reduce emissions, decrease reliance on grid electricity, and offer scalability for future expansion. So as we go through the rest of the presentation today, and you hear more about the background of the project, there are two sort of key messages I'd like to point out for you to consider as we go along.
Stephanie?
Uh-oh.
Oh, no, got you back.
I see there was there was a bit of a glitch, I see. But as I was saying, one of the key messages is recognizing the value proposition for ocean energy as far as providing an optimum combination of energy generation sources. And in particular, having ocean energy, we were modeling and evaluating how ocean energy could mitigate the intermittency of these other generation sources. And then the other important message is that ocean energy is not an off-the-shelf solution. And instead, what we were looking at is could this type of a project be designed to be replicable and scalable and adaptable to other aquaculture operators? That was very important to us and to our team to understand that. So what's important about that was the co-design collaborative nature of this project. In our report, I'll make sure to put a link to our final report in the chat as soon as I'm finished here. So now I'd like to take the opportunity to quickly introduce our project team, because I just feel very fortunate that we had such a talented and amazing group of individuals to work with. Just a second. So as I mentioned earlier, the Australian Ocean Energy Group designed and led this project, but our parent company, Climate Kick Australia, was really our sponsor. And Alex Ogg was also part of the AOEG team, and I served as the project manager. Hamish will be, I'm just going to introduce Hamish in just a moment. And as I mentioned, he's the general manager of Southern Ocean Mariculture. And we also had David Lane, who was a member of the board and actively involved in our project team as well. Part of the, we had three other really invaluable team members who included Azura Ocean Technologies, who provided the wave energy technology and that provided the basis for the modeling. Deloitte Emissions Solutions contributed to the modeling, and they also took a deep dive into the emissions and did the assessment on the emissions strategy and emissions reduction strategy and documented that. And then finally, we had the CEO of Syncline Energy, who's a microgrid specialist, and he certainly guided the design of the system, did a lot of the assessment of the modeling results and so forth. So all in all, it was just an amazing project and a great experience. And so I'd just like to thank the team for their great work and hope you'll be very excited about the results that we accomplished as well. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to introduce Hamish to talk a little bit about Southern Ocean Mariculture's objectives and their experience.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. So I'm Hamish Ebury. I'm actually operations manager here at Southern Ocean Mariculture. And it was actually quite a privilege to be a part of this project. I think having people like Deloitte and Phil from Syncline and Michael from Azura was great, and us being able to share all our data and get it down on paper and get the modelling done was really good. But Southern Ocean Mariculture, we've always sort of been at the forefront of exploring renewables and energy efficiencies. So we've upgraded our pumps to bigger, more energy efficient pumps. We've got heat exchangers and heat pumps working in the nursery, energy efficient buildings, 250 kilowatt of solar, and we've also explored ocean energy before, which was a bit of a failure, but we've got to learn from these things and move forward. So as a business, we recognise we're a high energy user and we can't continue to rely on fossil fuels. We pump 24/7, so solar and wind alone isn't going to replace our energy usage. So we've got to explore new technologies. So ultimately, as well as providing reductions in carbon emissions, exploring these potentials have the ability to also save dollars and increase reliability and get away from that grid reliance. So that was our basis for being a part of the project, pretty much in a nutshell.
Great, thank you, Hamish. Well, it was certainly a pleasure to work with Southern Ocean Mariculture, and it's very exciting to see what the potential is. So I'll be talking a little bit more about, well, what's next. So this project was really only the beginning, and the important, go to the next slide. So as we mentioned, this particular phase of this project was really to document the energy production changes by adding ocean energy into a microgrid system or a multi-renewable energy generation system, and to see how it would react and respond to Southern Ocean Mariculture's needs and whether it would align with those needs. And as a result of that work and that analysis, we wanted to produce an optimum design. And that's what we're here to share with you today. What I'd like to do is just explain or provide some context for the project in this universe of the whole ocean energy development project. So from end to end, from the very beginning of a concept of an ocean energy system or microgrid system, all the way through to the time it's built and to the time you turn the switch and is producing electricity, it's a pretty extensive process. And certainly that was beyond the scope of this particular project. And I just wanted to clarify that this particular initiative was just the concept and the modeling and the optimum design. And it's a really important step because what it did is helped us all the team members, to align around what the desired future state would be, what the system would look like, so that we can move on to the next phases, which are the pre-build planning, the engineering, all the business and financial analysis, and eventually on to implementation. So you can see that we're just in the beginning of the journey, but we were off to a good start. This is just a conceptual visual illustration of the concept that we had for the ocean energy microgrid. In summary, at a very creative level, you can see the blue on top of the green represents a solar array that which Southern Ocean Mariculture does have a 250 kilowatt solar array on site. The white buildings at the land-sea interface there represent the operation facility. The yellow devices in the water represent the Azura ocean energy devices, and it's all connected onshore through an energy management system and battery storage. One of the things that we did in terms of the scope of the project, the modeling is what the heart of the research project was, and the team, with their various backgrounds and expertise, undertook a number of different scenarios. And Homer Pro software was the tool that was used for the modeling, and Syncline and yes.
Sorry to interrupt. We've just got a couple of people who aren't able to see the slides.
Oh,
so
okay.
Are you? What I can see at the moment is SOM modeled scenarios. Is that the slides that you're talking to? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Is it not sharing properly?
Yeah, hi Stephanie, it's Marnie here. I can't see the slides and a few others can't either, but others seem to be. So it might just be a reset for us that can't see it.
Sorry about that.
I'm really IT illiterate, so all I can suggest is jumping out and jumping back in.
Yeah.
But
Stephanie, it's still a good story without the slides, so don't hold up. I reckon just keep on going.
Well, you did the hard work, so I should let you talk about the modeling.
One quick suggestion, folks, if you can't see the slides, there, just in your ribbon at the top, there's a view button. You could just it might not work straight away, but if you just try clicking view and then focus on content, or even just scroll through the different views to see if slides pop up for you. But otherwise, off and on again might be the way to go.
Oh, well, I'm sorry this is glitching here. No, that's okay. I'm sorry it's glitching here. Should I continue, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you show your slides? Show our slides. Sorry. Continue.
Just continue. We'll sort it out.
Yeah, continue.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I was talking about the modeling and how the basic options of the modeling that were undertaken through Homer Pro and done by Deloitte, by Marnie and her team and Syncline. We're looking at various options of the wave device and how many devices we would have, whether it's 1, 2, 4 devices in the water, looking at backup, and then looking at grid and off grid. And one of the things I just want to comment about the battery storage, Azura also took a look at and evaluated their technology in terms of incorporating storage, energy storage, onto their devices. And the significance of that is that it would hold or reduce the amount of energy storage that would be needed by increasing battery storage on land. So that would help keep costs down. So that was just one of the sidebar items of strong interest. So as the output, through the extensive hard work of Marnie and her team in Syncline, over 18 scenarios were evaluated at this level of detail. And I don't expect that you can read any of this, but it is included in our report again, so you can take a deeper dive into it. But you can see how detailed and how structured and how refined the analysis was. It was very extensive, and this is the kind of information that we took a dive into in order to help some ultimately decide which option would work best for them. And the results were very exciting in that through the modeling, it did demonstrate that with 2 ocean energy devices offshore, there was close to a 50% reduction in emissions. And if we increased it to 4 devices, that the modeling demonstrated there could be close to 94% reduction in emissions. So it was very, very exciting to see that kind of value proposition for ocean energy, amongst other things. So I just want to jump real quickly I just have 2 more slides just to kind of wrap up and isolate the conclusions, if you will, from the research. And I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. But there's 5 major conclusions that came out of the project. One is that an ocean energy microgrid system can be designed to be scalable. In other words, it can grow with the business, or it can start at one size and be able to expand as the needs of the business expand. So that was important. The second conclusion is that the contribution of ocean energy, where to us really was significant, was being able to address the intermittency issue of solar, and if wind was included in a microgrid system, it would address that as well. But the idea being that it helped to stabilize the energy production and load, and of course with a sufficient battery storage that provided the reliability that is really needed to address aquaculture's needs. The third conclusion was that an optimized design can be aligned with the strategic objectives of a company. And what I mean by that is that ocean energy is really important I want to emphasize the fact that ocean energy is not a one-size-fits-all. It's not something that you can say, I want this device and just drop it into the ocean offshore. It is something that is designed and adapted to the specific location and needs, and most importantly to the end user. So it's the process by which a system is designed, and why that is important to consider those steps, and not that you just buy something off the shelf. The fourth conclusion was around emissions reductions, and through the previous slide in the graph, it was demonstrated and modeled that there can be substantial reductions in emissions by the addition of an ocean energy component. And then finally, to conclude, I mentioned earlier about what an amazing team we had. And the technical work is obviously very critical in any project, but it really, success comes down to the people. And we had an amazing team. And I think we demonstrated what co-design means. And for anybody that's thinking about a design of a microgrid system, everyone needs to be at the table to share data, to really understand each other's needs, and to be able to work together for the ultimate goal of designing a very effective energy system. So with that, I'll conclude. I'm happy to answer any questions later in the program.
Thanks so much for that, Stephanie. Really appreciate it. I did notice that Nick Savers had his hand up for a while with a question. So Nick, did you have a question for Stephanie before we move on?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Stephanie, I noticed you talked about the battery on board on the wave generator, but then you need a battery on land as well. So could you just explain in a little more detail the advantage of having the battery on board as well as the one on land?
Certainly. So the onboard battery storage was an add-on to the device. It was something that Ozura was capable of engineering, but the size of the device, which is only 100, each device is only 100 kilowatts, so it's relatively small. So there's a limitation in how much energy storage or how much, storage system they can provide. So it always will depend on the end user's energy needs, and then evaluating how much additional storage needs to be managed onshore through the system and as backup and protection. So all of it is variable depending on the conditions and energy demand and so forth. But one of the things about incorporating energy storage onto a device is it helps to not reduce necessarily battery storage, but it reduces the need to expand energy storage onshore, which could be quite costly.
Sorry, Stephanie, can I just expand on that slightly? My understanding was with the onboard storage that while the unit was working in the ocean and generating electricity, it had a lot of peaks and troughs. Right. And my understanding, the development of the onboard storage was to smooth out that load going back to shore. So it was actually a nice smooth load coming back to shore.
Yes, and I'll confirm that as well, Stephanie. It also the load leveling and the quality of the energy from a variability, as Hamish just said, it takes out some of the noise that you can see sometimes with wave energy. So it has a real stability impact. And that's why it's actually quite small, the battery device offshore. It's not really designed to be a battery storage solution.
And there's no battery storage on land in the modelling.
Well, we had the scenarios where you could have it and not have it, and that was some of the sort of like broader scenarios we assessed. But what we're seeing globally with wave energy is obviously it reduces the need for battery storage, is the whole concept of wave through its 24/7 availability. It's a game changer.
Thanks for that, guys. But the other thing that was mentioned, I think on the following slide, was the potential to sell energy as well, so presumably back into the grid. But Hamish and I had some discussions around how that might work, and it seems problematic because of the it just seems like it's a difficult thing to do. And I think it was related to the size of the power poles, but then we didn't get any further on that. Hamish, you didn't hear anything more, I take it?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything more, and it's something that I sort of don't understand at the moment, because I figure we're getting, the amount of energy that we're using down the poles, so how come we can't transfer that back? I'm just not sure about that. And I think a lot of the scenarios that have been put forward there, one of the interests that I had about the scenarios due to needing a backup upon backup here, because we pump 24/7. I was always reluctant to totally get away from the grid connection, so to close off that grid connection. But I was always interested in what the grid provider might actually charge us for that intermittent connection. I think we'd be. There's lots of words that come to mind, but I think we'd be bent over a barrel.
I mean, there's certainly, virtual power networks, and the ability to do that is very dependent on who is the energy provider. And in the case of Hamish, your situation, I think we looked at that, but also talked about behind the meter, almost community sharing of power, sort of not necessarily going out to the transmission networks, but almost a direct shared community opportunity as well was lurking in the background there with excess power.
So with changes with the in the NEM, with the NEM review and that kind of thing, and are there going to be greater opportunities to put energy back into the grid? And also if Hamish had a battery on site, would he be able to store up energy that he can use at night? Was one of the other scenarios that we were getting at, because of the the enormous cost of buying peak power. maybe that's a different discussion. But
It's a
different
good
modelling.
It's a good segue though, Nick, into this policy discussion, because it sort of feels like with this project you arrive at a point where the engineering is just starting to supersede the policy settings. So if we talk about the ability to actually create energy, store it, and then we want to export it out, but if the barrier is a policy barrier rather than an engineering barrier, this is where we start talking about, well, what is the government's role in all of this possibly? And I thought, Hamish, if it's all right to throw it to you as a genuine potential user of this technology, and someone who's sort of done the homework, so to speak, through Project AquaGrid, what in your mind is the role of the government here to increase the uptake of these sorts of projects?
So my thoughts, first of all, with all the modelling, like if we didn't look into this further, I think we'd be mad. It just shows, if we put in 2 systems, prove they work, and we're able to expand to 4 to 6 to 8, I think it'd be well worth looking into. In all honesty, I haven't been the one doing the groundwork in terms of policy and looking at permits and all that sort of stuff. Michael Byrne from Missouri has been doing that groundwork. But my understanding is that it's extremely difficult to get all that in place as to, what's that next step, what's the first step for a start, and then what's the next step. So, it's almost you need a footpath sort of thing. Government needs to have something in place where they say, all right, so you've got this technology that's been proven in the ocean. You want to put it in at your site. This is what you need to do. And one of the notes I've got here is like those early movers. Everything is so much more expensive to do for that early mover. So that assistance I think is really important as well. That access to grants to try to get that ball rolling. Because I think if this was proven at an actual site and the energy was shown to be generated, it's got to take off around the rest of Australia. It's it's quite promising.
Yeah. Did you want to jump in, Stephanie?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to build on Hamish's comment and add the fact in terms of policy that in my view, that it seems that governments could also help on creating market incentives on the market or demand side by the end user, and kind of building what you're saying, Hamish, that, to go to the next step in terms of the build, it's very capital intensive. And this is going to be one of the challenges for anybody who's interested in looking at ocean energy microgrids, is the front end capital investment and high cost to move to the actual engineering design and actual engineering and build phase. And that's where government could be helping a lot, is supporting the adopters, the end user, to be able to pursue initiatives like this and help in their energy transition.
Sure, and probably one thing that we've mentioned it in passing, given this is a decarbonisation webinar, but there's a huge positive externality here, which is the reduction in emissions that these businesses are actually achieving, just besides the energy resilience, besides the energy cost. My view is that the question should be asked of the government is, what's in it for these people who are moving first and reducing their carbon emissions. Hamish sort of touched on this, that when you look at the final report of the AquaGrid project, you notice that it's not the sort of thing you can ask but one of your own staff members with some spare time to look into. It's got a lot of input from people who know this stuff back to front, and it's also it's quite complicated in itself. So I was going to ask, probably this could be one for you, Stephanie. Does the government need to do anything about the amount of expertise we have in this area in this country? Are there enough people to advise businesses who want to move towards these sorts of systems?
Well, in my opinion, I don't think so. It's, ocean energy is a nascent industry and emerging, and I think we are strong in terms of engineering and the technical side, but the business side, the marketing side, and sort of the creating demand side of helping move this forward is not very strong yet. And you mentioned something, or I think Hamish mentioned, is a little bit of a catch-22, is that until we can really demonstrate a project, like we can have something in the water, it's operating, it's demonstrating its credibility, it's going to be hard to get that kind of support and build and attract that kind of expertise that you just mentioned, Tom.
Sure. I'm also conscious, like, there's other people on the call rather than just me asking my own question. So I fully invite anyone who has a question about the system or about the policy space to raise their hand, and I'll certainly get to you. I have one last question, sort of a personal interest in this space. Hamish, this might be a question for you. That so one thing that's really apparent from even just the aerial photographs of your facility is it looks really new, looks really modern. It looks like the sort of facility you could plug new tech into. Do you see a barrier to retrofitting places, and then probably an extension to that question is, if you had a greenfield site, is it more attractive to go to off-grid from day dot, or are we still in an era where you need to be connected to the grid?
As I said, like the grid for us, we've got a 400 kilowatt generator. We've got solar. We've got backup diesel motors on our electric pumps. Like, we've got backup upon backup. Still pumping 24/7. I wanted to keep that grid connection just for another backup, but I suppose that's because it's there. If you were looking at a greenfield site, I think you would have to be looking at all these alternatives and setting it up from scratch. And look, you say we're a really modern site, or modern looking site. We've been here since 1996, and we've done we've made our mistakes. We've done our learnings to get to where we are today. And on that point, I think with ocean energy, I think that's got to be recognised as well, that there's been mistakes made. I know from some of our consultations with certain groups, there is a bit of pushback because there's a unit still sitting on the ocean out in front of our site here. It was a failure, but you've got to learn from those failures. A failure is not necessarily a failure if you can take your learnings from it and do things better the next time around. So we're sort of trying to push down that angle with this as well.
Sure. And one thing I was interested in, for you at your role as a GM or even as a production manager, do you need to have staff that know how to get out on the water and fix that's something that requires a small repair, or is that something you call the contractors in for?
We've got, there's only 3 of us now that we're not commercially qualified, but we're aquaculture qualified divers. Our intake lines are in 4 meters of water, so it's pretty, it's shallow diving, easy to get out of most scenarios. It's pretty simple diving, but yeah, we've got a few staff on site that we can do certain things. We can't use tools, surface supply tools underwater. That's the only thing.
Sure.
But we can take down our spanners and our hammers and crowbars and whatever else, and get it done.
Yeah, sure. Because I'm also trying to paint in my head a picture of, when you ask the government for something, it's a good idea to ask for like a neatly tied up package, rather than just ask for something, realize you can't fix it, ask for the next thing, whether it's it's investment in this area, but also investments in the experts who can advise on it, and also the folks that will be trained to fix it. So I'm just trying to work out and certainly hear from someone with a bit of first-hand experience whether there are gaps in this process. And I noticed, JP, you've put your hand up as well.
Thank you. My question sort of follows on that train of thought, Hamish, for you around implications for the business around insurances, and like, has there been any sort of flow-on implications there for you in terms of you trialing something new? Has that had any flow-on implications there? I just know certainly when I've been to one of the circular economy workshops with Robert from FRDC, the two main barriers that people raised with moving forward with circular economy initiatives was access to finance and the ability to get insurance. I wondered if that was the similar challenge for you.
I haven't seen that at this stage. As I said, it's very early days. We've done nothing here that'll in terms of going down that track, other than a little bit of exploring of possibilities as to where to next. It's sort of hard to answer that one at this stage.
Anyone online have any questions about the system itself, possibly? I know I've got one, probably sounds a little bit simple, but the battery that's actually on, so do you call it the onboard battery? Is that different in any way to the battery that you would otherwise have on land? Like, I mean, I'm assuming this thing cops a battering from salt, wind, and everything else.
Yeah. So I'm glad you asked that question, because I did want to clarify that this is a unique engineering or design feature for this particular company. And that was the reason that I was talking about around caution around the energy storage on the device. Is just this particular company has that capability, or is designing, I should say they're engineering that capability. Other ocean energy technology providers may or may not have similar capability. So the storage, in my opinion, the requirement around storage is really critical, and it's dependent on the modeling that is done around the energy demand by the end user versus energy supply by all the energy generation components, and trying to balance. It's about finding that balance to get that optimum system that meets the needs of the end user. So energy storage, I think what you were asking, Tom, was technically, is it a different unit? And yes, it would be a different unit, different type of storage. But I just wanted to reinforce the fact that not every ocean energy company offers that.
For sure. Marnie, did you have something to add?
Yeah, look, just Tom, I'm thinking as you're speaking about that repeatability, scalability, the technology, what is the future state for this type of project? And knowing Hamish and this project, I can't help thinking about how many sites like SOM are there in Australia, to look at what could be a long-term, cost-effective solution for the industry more broadly than just one solution. And there's three inputs that are probably driving that. And so one is the technology. So we modeled all those scenarios with just the Zero technology, which is a really solid, good local one and accessible for this project. But when we had the International Ocean Energy Conference in Melbourne last year, it's clear that there are other sort of, maturing technologies happening all over the world. And with the HOMA software model itself, my point is that it's actually very easy once you set up, like for SOM, you could drop in other technologies and see how they would perform under the same site conditions and information. So what you said before about the skill sets needed for the modelling, I feel like we have most of this stuff and we can make it freely available, the model set up for whoever it wants, like it's part of this project. So the incremental effort to test out different technologies or different project sites, it's half done already for other projects. So the scalability, repeatability could really be tested out across a category of aquaculture sites around Australia is what I'm thinking. And through that effort, it would be much clearer to see, well, what's the sort of industry activation scalability to make it cost effective. So if there's 20 to 50 projects available for this technology that is in the realm of maybe, it would help with that business decision making and refining the business case to offer that to various groups who want to build, own, operate, like SOM, which I think is the model that's going to work well for the aquaculture industry, where there's operational capability already available. It's no different. It's not quite off-the-shelf diesel generation, but it shouldn't have to be the biggest project these organisations have to adopt to get energy independence and sustainability in the mix. That's some of my thoughts around
For
the
sure.
next
Yeah,
steps.
some really good points. Thank you for that, Marnie. Appreciate that. Robert, did you have your hand up next?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And I just thought I'd make a comment. It flows on from what Marnie says as well. We seem to, when we talk about renewable energy, a lot of the commentary, political or non-political, is that it's like trying to say it's an alternative energy rather than a complementary renewable energy. And I think one of the things about this project, and it's a microgrid project, so it combines both solar energy, it has backup diesel generator in there because you still need to have some backup in there. You've got wave energy as well. It could actually have wind energy as well. The smarts is about how you combine them all together with battery, if need be, to be able to provide your most cost-effective energy needs, which you can be super reliant on. And I think that's what this project and others, as part of the ongoing project with Seafood Australia, is to be able to work on the best ways of the different potentials that the various groups have got wherever you are, in whatever aquaculture sector you may be. Some of it may be drop in alternative fuels as part of it as well, plus some of this other material. But I think we've got to try and get away from thinking of a single alternate solution to grid power or to diesel. It's a combination of these technologies which are now presenting themselves as viable commercial options, and the smarts is about putting them together, and also before that is to create the economic decision-making tools and platforms like this project has done to be able to evaluate them so that it helps with the business case in getting capital.
Yeah, agreed, Rob. And yeah, that's right, because I think that's what makes this SOM project or SOM project attractive. Is it's this really nice little neat package of the wave energy, the solar energy, the facility in the middle, and then the opportunity to do lots of different things with that when you add the battery in and the diesel backup. And it's super handy that it's an aquaculture. It's an aquaculture project that you can see repeated around the country, because quite often the best places to do these things isn't right next to the suburbs where the connection would be easy. It's hundreds or thousands of kilometres away from from a tall tower in a CBD. Nath Bicknell, have you got your hand up there, mate?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Really great and interesting. I think obviously wave energy has that synergy with seafood and helps that story and use case. But my question around obviously zoning and policy is going to be challenging. Is there a best practice, or has anyone online or the project come across a state or a territory which is kind of leading the way in this case? Would that be
it's a
fair
bit
question,
of a mix.
Tom?
It's a mixed bag, I think, Nathan. Part of what we're seeing through the Futures of Seafood project is that some states do this well, some don't, and only do it well for aquaculture, or only do it well for wild catch, and only do it well for some sections. Like, it's a real mixed bag. So it's part of the wash of what will come out of hopefully Futures as well, when we're looking at a comparison of how each of the jurisdictions are managed, and pulling pieces out of that, going, well, South Australia does pre-approved zones really well for aquaculture, and does data collection well for aquaculture. So we recommend to all the other jurisdictions that you follow their model. So like there's stuff like that will come out of it, but I think there's definitely opportunity for us to better highlight what you're talking about through this project and make that connection with something like Futures and things like Stephanie and Hamish's observations with their experience to say, well, these were the concerns we came across as well with the jurisdiction we were working with.
Tom, if I may, a follow up to that, Marnie, is you've covered the Azura technology in this case. Is there specifics that we can dig into more about the amenity and what they look like? Obviously, Australians are very concerned about what they're looking at when they look out to the ocean, not so much about what their beach house looks like from the whale's point of view, but
well, yeah, I mean, this device is barely visible. Like it wouldn't actually be visible from shore pretty much. So in terms of that, the NIMBYs, sort of like in that aesthetic, it's actually really as good as it gets, really. And Hamish, I think when you've looked at the images and the photos and you've thought about what you would see from your shoreline.
Yeah, look, I think it's it's not nowhere near as intrusive as a lot of other technologies out there. There is, pretty much a couple of posts on the surface for each unit, which would have to have lights on them, but you'd only see them on the peak of the swells, and they're sort of 300 metres offshore as well. So it's not that obtrusive at all, and it's easy to get an idea if you go onto Azura's website as well and have a look at the stuff they've got on there.
Yeah, and look, Nathan, there's pros and cons of all the various subgroups of technologies. Wave energy isn't just one solution, right? There's completely submerged underwater, completely not visible stuff. There's obviously no moving parts in the water, has other pros and cons, sort of sitting above the waterline. So I think if we're integrating this type of technology into whether it's wave walls or on boats or in further offshore solutions with ocean aquaculture, pens and stuff, like there's a not one size fits all. I think all these factors need to be optimized, and that's why I like the modeling tools, because you could optimize lots of options, and hopefully with a magic button and a bit of AI you could really get the best of your sustainability, reliability and affordability matrix mapped out pretty easily with these tools, because once you've got the data you can really optimize it.
Yes. So like with the aquaculture in South Australia, they have a permitted devices they have on their leases, and they're kind of a known quantum. So I mean, looking into the future, if you had a list of permitted items that you could have on your lease, that would kind of streamline that process, akin to having your diesel generator. You don't get asked too many questions about putting that on your site. So yeah.
But can you have wave energy at the moment?
Well, I'm not sure, but
I think it's more silent than a yes or no, I think was what I understand. But Julie might know more than others.
Yeah.
Stephanie, did you have something to add to that convo?
Yes, thank you. I think the biggest challenge for us is, in my view, is moving to the next step. I mean, all the questions that have been asked here today, and all the discussion and discussion around policy are excellent. However, I think until we have a project operating and visible, these are all theoretical questions, and there's going to be lots of concerns that may fill in the blanks unless we really have factual data from a project that is operating. So really that's the important part, is trying to find a creative way to move to the next step, which is it's the engineering design, it's getting all the permitting, really understanding that permitting process, the requirements, getting stakeholder social license behind it, and then having a good implementation strategy, and of course the business case. There has to be a good business case to justify the high investment that's needed to move it forward. So there's a lot to be done, and this is where I would put out my hand to all of you, that if you have ideas on how we can progress to the next step and keep the success of this going, that really is the ultimate goal.
Yeah, it's a good point, Stephanie. Nick, I see you've got your hand up, but Simon Wilcox, I might just pop you on notice because obviously we've got a number of early mover trials as a part of this project, which perhaps you can quickly speak to in response to Stephanie's comment. So, Nick.
Oh, sorry, me first?
Oh, yeah. You.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Julie. Just further on Stephanie's comment, it's regarding developing a business case and for a real case scenario. It seems to me that the business case would be so much stronger if there was good policy in place. So I'm just wondering what can be done to try and encourage, better policy to be developed now, and especially following Marnie's comment. Well, actually, several people's comments. I think it was on the AI and real-time monitoring, the smarts basically that feeds into that policy, because distributed energy's got such a huge advantage in that you don't have to have a lot of extra poles and wires and, transmission systems necessarily rolled out. So, if there's good policy, it just seems to me that it would make the business case a lot easier.
Sure. And Nick, that was almost a question designed specifically for me in the summary of the webinar I was about to give, because the project that, so the FRDC funded project, which you're a part of, led by SIA and Blue Economy CRC, one of the elements is a policy directions paper. And whilst I've been online today, I've just made a few notes, so forgive me if they're not fully polished yet, but I've pulled out some things that I think are the key, maybe policy recommendations is a term to use, which is things like underneath the broad arching request for funding, which is almost like seeking funding from the government is, I think, probably too simplistic. Under that is things like the creation of, to use Hamish's term, a footpath, or to use government terminology, often talk about roadmaps, which is about having the right experts, advice, business sort of business cases and financial advice to actually assist businesses who are interested in doing this to take the next step. And then to use one of Marnie's contributions, it's, I think, right at that stage or just before that stage is almost like a nationwide review or expressions of interest being sought from industry about if you had this roadmap, who'd be interested in doing something like this. The next parts of the package I think that would be important are a training package to actually upskill people who can, perhaps fix a diesel generator to also work with these alternate technologies if they're interested in upskilling in those areas, and which leads into the support of the feeder industries that you need to actually roll out the tech. So, in my mind, I think of places, I know one close to where I live in Tonsley in South Australia is creating a hub that revolves around, supply of like high level manufacturing or, sort of technical expertise in that area, and the support of the feeder industries into aquaculture or ocean-based or blue economy technology is one thing. Nathan brought up zoning, which I think will be an issue. Well, I would almost be willing to bet my house that as soon as you put in the application to develop a part of the ocean, you'd have stakeholders that you probably didn't even know exist, would have their feedback on whether you should or shouldn't do something. So perhaps some guidelines around whether, looking at aquaculture leases and whether that's the best mechanism to kind of use as the way to pass some of those zoning hurdles. And lastly, insurance. The JP brought up insuring, I think it was you, JP, insuring these things and how difficult that would be, because insuring even land-based assets is extremely difficult, let alone things in the ocean. So that was kind of like a little summary of a few things we talked about. And I noticed there's no other hands up, which is good because we're right on, is it 2:30 my time, so 3 o'clock Eastern time. And I did see Justin on the phone at one point. I'm not sure what time it is in WA, but probably around lunch. So it's probably a good time to say thanks very much for joining. JP, did you want to have some last words from SIA?
Just thanks very much to Stephanie and Hamish for taking the time to share the learnings from your project today. We really appreciate it. And it's great to be able to draw, you know, all of our work together to be able to come back to industry with something where we've, you know, we're not reinventing the wheel, and we've all collaborated to sort of come back, you know, with something that's considered and taken into account, you know, what you've already learned. So hopefully this was of value to you guys dialing in today. And I think, as Tom mentioned, there'll be other webinars coming up, which we'll be advertising in the coming weeks. We'll be talking through, you know, some of the results. We've been collecting our own data through this project. So we wanted to share that back with industry as well.
It's good. Thank you for inviting me to attend. I appreciate it. It's great.
No worries.
Yeah,
and thanks very much to our funders, FRDC.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all.